going on, everybody? It's your man Louie T here with another installment of the Louie T Network podcast. A lot to get to on this Tuesday evening. Had a very eventful weekend. It was everything that I envisioned it to be outside of the fact that we had to stay home. And I already, explained that to you guys on the last episode of the podcast. But all in all, dealing with what we had to deal with, um, it was a great weekend. It was a great weekend, and I want to share with you guys some of my experiences um, from the weekend, some viewing endeavors that we undertook that were extraordinary, and some other things. So we'll have some story time and all of that good stuff today. You're locked in to the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 430th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I am refreshed. Remember, I told you guys last week I was worn out. Last week tried to take me out. The first half of the week, at least, tried to take the kid out. And it was rough. I was not good. And I think the evidence of that was just the lack of activity on my channel. You know good and well, if I don't plan to be out, if I don't tell you in advance, hey, I'm going to be out of the office from XYZ to XYZ, then you just expect content. And that wasn't the case last week. I just didn't have it in me. My tank was, essentially empty. This pseudo vacation is what it ended up turning into, with the 4 days off, essentially. Did wonders for the kid. Feel so much better. I feel refreshed, back like cook crack. And I have a lot to discuss with you guys because a lot transpired over the weekend. We're going to talk about the Giants off-season Hard Knocks episode 2. That just dropped and I had a chance to watch it. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on that. I'm going to tell you the story. I promised you the next podcast episode I was going to tell you about my out of body experience. I was in outer space. So I'll talk to you about my voyage a little bit later on in the show. I actually had another pseudo out of body experience, but it wasn't nearly as extreme as the first one. So I guess I'll tell you about both of them, but the first one in particular is the one we'll talk about a little bit later on. So we also have some things that I was able to get to. So I can't remember if we had this conversation or not. Did we finish season 1 of Invincible? Or did we still have 2 episodes left the last time we spoke? I don't recall if I talked to you about us cleaning up episodes 7 and 8, or just 8. Matter of fact, I think I told you guys my wife stopped at 7, after 7, and she didn't want to watch 8 because she had to go to work the next day. I think I did tell you that, if I'm not mistaken. So we watched 8. So let's clean that up real quick. We watched episode 8. It was good. I enjoyed it, and it set the stage for season 2, obviously. At some point, Omni-Man is coming back. We have to assume. What will his temperament be? What will he be looking to accomplish if and when he does come back? These are all questions that we have to ask ourselves. Can anybody stop Omni-Man? Is really the bigger question. But my wife was not thrilled with how episode 8 ended. And you know, the funny thing is we had this discussion. I was like, I don't know what you were looking for. I don't know what you thought was going to happen. She's like, I just wanted them to fight. They fought. One of them got their asses kicked and the other one stopped short of killing him. What did you think just transpired? What did we just watch? I know you were expecting it to go back and forth. It was a one-sided beatdown because one is superior to the other. And had Mark not appealed to his dad's human side, he'd be dead. It wasn't good enough for my wife. So now I think we're in this weird space where I'm going to have to sell her on season 2, or else I'm going to have to watch it by myself, because she wasn't pleased with how season 1 ended. So now her appetite for season 2 isn't as great as it would have been had they left her, you know, on a cliffhanger and she's like, "Oh my god, let's watch, you know, the first episode of season 2." That's not where they left her. So I'm going to have to sell her on season 2, or else I'm going to have to watch it by myself, which is, it won't be the worst thing in the world, but she started it with me. I want her to finish it with me, right? So we'll see how that goes. And the reason I know she's not super thrilled and anxious to watch season 2 is because we had all weekend. We had options this entire weekend. Every time we sat down last week, she just automatically turned on Invincible because she was locked in. We had options this weekend and she chose everything but Invincible. So that tells me that right now it's not high on her priority list. And I'm going to have to sell her on the fact that we need, because this is her thing. Okay. And this is the running joke that I have with her. She doesn't find it as funny as I do, but she loves to start series, but she never finishes them. Okay. And when I say never, I'm talking about when we watch something together. It has to be something that she absolutely loves. We probably have anywhere from 12 to 15 open series right now that we just haven't finished. You know, which is ridiculous. Okay? I'm a big, let's not start something else until we finish what we're watching. Let's not have 6, 7 different series open and just kind of have them floating out there and then still be looking for something new to watch. Let's clean this up. Let's take care of this one first, and then we can move on to the next one. But I can always tell when she's not really fully engaged because now she wants to watch something else, right? So she didn't want to watch season 2. We had options. We binge watched all of Supercell over the weekend. We're going to talk about that here in a second. We watched the movie Beekeeper, The Beekeeper. Going to talk about that here in a second. We started The Brother's Son. I'm not going to talk about that at all. But I will say episode 1, I think we did episode 2 as well. Pretty good. Pretty good. But I say this to go back to my original point, which was she avoided the rest of Invincible like the plague. So I'm going to have to sell her on that. I didn't have a problem with the way season 1 ended. I'm looking forward to seeing what the plot and the storyline for season 2 is going to be. But we watched Beekeeper. I want to get to that real quick. Beekeeper, told you we love badass movies. I don't know if there's a better badass than Jason Statham. And I was dying to watch this one. Beekeeper is right up our alley. I was waiting for it to hit one of these streaming apps. Finally hit Amazon Prime. And we didn't waste any time knocking that one down. It was everything that it was supposed to be. The plot, how it was carried out, everything was excellent. enjoyed it thoroughly, and I think they left the door open for a number 2. It's like every other Jason Statham movie you've ever watched. Something happens at the beginning that sets him off. He's triggered, and then he goes on a killing spree, and he doesn't stop until the person responsible for making him feel bad at the beginning is dead. It's pretty simple, straightforward. That's what makes a great badass movie is you don't get too cute with it. Stick to the basics. If you have a formula that works and it's not broken, don't try and fix it. It was almost 2 hours and it was well worth the wait. So, if you haven't watched The Beekeeper, I didn't say much of anything. I didn't tell you the plot of the movie, I didn't tell you about anything because I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't watched it. But it's a typical Jason Statham badass movie. If you enjoy those movies, you'll enjoy this one. So we watched Supercell, which is a series that came out recently on Netflix. It's one of the top shows on Netflix right now as we speak. I think it was at number 1 at one point. I think it might be at number 2 right now. I'm not sure. But what was crazy is, and this is how I know me and my wife are in sync. I told you guys I'll sit downstairs for an hour and a half and not watch anything but watch a bunch of previews and just put them. I told you I do like spring cleaning. I called it one time where I literally went through our list on Netflix, got rid of the stuff that I know we're not going to watch or things that we've already watched. And then I went hunting for, new shows, new movies. Ooh, this one looks good. This one might be good. Watching the preview, seeing how I feel about it, adding it to the list. And, every so often my wife does something similar, or she'll be on social media. Someone will bring up a show and she'll go check out the trailer. And she's like, that might be something we want to watch. And so it's it's gotten to the point now where Darnell Kelly, yes, we watched Axel F as well, and I should talk about that, and I will. We'll do that. Either we'll do that tonight, or we'll do that next episode. Um, but yes, we watched Axel F as well. Look, we had plenty of time on our hands this weekend, which is why I said I can tell she's not really thrilled about season 2 of Invincible because we watched everything that was available to us, and we could have easily gotten in 2 or 3 episodes of Invincible, and we didn't. But this is how I know me and my wife are like kindred spirits, and we just know each other. We get each other. I will go in and I will find something that my wife I think will like, and I will add it to the list, and then I'll ask her, "Hey, did you check out this show?" And she'll be like, "Yeah, I added it to the list." And I'm like, "I already did that." And she's like, "Yeah, I went in there to go add it and it was already added. I watched the preview and I think it's going to be excellent. We should watch it." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So we had both agreed beforehand that we should watch Supercell. Check it out. The preview was pretty vague. Like it didn't give you a lot, but if you're like a superhero type of fan or you like um those types of movies, those science fiction type movies, and I don't even I'm trying to find the right way to describe it in what kind of box to put it in, because while it is a certain type of science fiction, I hate science fiction like alien movies and um supernatural type movies. That's not up my alley. So I guess it's let's just call it a superhero movie because that's a show. That's what it is. It's a superhero show, essentially. So we love superhero shows. So and movies, etc. So even though the preview didn't really give you a whole hell of a lot, it gave you enough to make you say, huh, let's at least watch the first episode and see what it's about. It's based in London, so there's little accents and things of that nature, which is fine. It's cool. But once you get into the meat and potatoes of the show, it's actually a really good concept. So, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched Supercell, you might want to fast forward probably 5 to 7 minutes. Um, or if you're watching this live, you either want to mute or just come back in 5 to 7 minutes. So, the plot is essentially that. So, at the beginning of the show, first episode, right out of the gate, there's this, laboratory essentially where they're housing individuals, and one of them escapes their cell. Essentially, they're keeping them in like little cells that are individualized and unique to them. And a lady just escapes, and she's running through the hallways trying to find a way out of this maze essentially that she's in, to escape to get back to her family. At that time, you don't know that these people are essentially being abducted. They have powers. Um, so let's go back a second. The theme of this show, it's based off of the sickle cell trait. If you have sickle cell, then there's a chance that it could turn into supercell, right? If you have sickle cell, then the supercell trait lies within you dormant. And there are a series of things that could trigger it and allow it to become active. And now all of a sudden you have a superpower. So someone has sickle cell, that trait can be passed down to their kids. So if you have supercell, then that means someone in your family, one of your parents, more likely than not, has supercell trait. Whether it ended up being dormant within them or not doesn't matter. They have it, and now you have it. The supercell is enhanced, or it becomes active when you are. It's more likely to become active when you are near someone else that has supercell and they are actively using it, or you encounter someone that has it. They don't use it, but they have it as well, and you encounter uh an extreme emotion around that person who has supercell, it also could trigger it as well. So it's different ways it can be triggered, but that's the gist of it. So a lot of these people don't know that they either have powers or they figure it out and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and by the time they figure out what's going on, this agency has snatched them up and housed them, right? So one of the ladies is trying to escape, and she gets to like a door, but it requires like a thumbprint or something like that, and she can't get out. So she uses her power to blast open the door, but she takes so long to get out that they shoot her in the back and they kill her. So keep in mind that while you have superpowers, you're still human. Like, it's not like you have one of these individuals that is in the show that ends up being one of the main characters actually has healing properties. He can heal himself. The others don't. So you can't just be willy-nilly with your powers and expect to not die. Like, you're still a human. So they shot her in the back, they killed her. At that time, we didn't know that she would play a role in the storyline, but she ended up being the mom of one of the 5 individuals who ultimately end up being, part of this Supercell team that's formed to try to stop this agency, if you will, this group that is trying to harness all of the power of these individuals, for their own gain and profit. So the show starts off that way. Then you go and you follow each individual character. So the show was 6 episodes, I believe. There are 5 of these characters that ultimately end up being main characters. So each of them had their own episode, kind of give you a backstory of their situation and them kind of learning how to deal with their powers and their individualized situations. So it's a really good show. And ultimately, each one of them have like a reason to be a part of the group. Initially, it was one guy in particular who has the ability to stop time, and he also has the ability to time travel, and he also has the ability to teleport. So he's probably one of the few that have like 3 superpowers. Most of them have 1 or 2 things they can do. He has like 3 or 4 things he can do. And he's really the main character. And he went to the future and he saw that his fiance was going to die in 3 months after he proposed to her. So his future self told him, if you go back and you get the other 4 members of their group, and when he went to the future, they were fighting that agency in the future. And he saw the faces of the 5, and his future self told him the names of the 4 others that he needed to go find and make sure that they stayed alive so that they could help him defeat that agency, and it could change the course of history. And so maybe his fiance wouldn't pass away now, right? So all he was fixated on was saving his fiance. So he goes back and he's trying to find these individuals. He has a list of names and the date that his fiance is supposed to pass away. It's in 3 months. So he's got essentially 3 months to figure out. Now, what he doesn't think about, and he was told this, is that if you go back and you alter history, then it changes when your fiance might pass away, but she could pass away even sooner or much later, right? Or 2 days later for that matter, right? You just don't know. You've altered history at that point. So long story short, he goes back to the present day. He's on a search to find the other 4 individuals who he needs to find to help him keep his fiance alive and alter history. Um, and he had already encountered one of them by happenstance, which is what really sort of activated his supercell trait. Because the guy that he encountered obviously has the supercell trait too. So that encounter gave him the ability to utilize his power for the first time. And after that, he was able to track him down. That led him to another person, and then that led him to another person, and ultimately he found everybody. And without saying too much, because it's obviously it was 6 episodes, and each episode was like roughly 50 minutes. It's a lot. It's a really good show. You get to the end of season 1. Um, the 5 of them are together and they're fighting to try to stay alive, 1, and 2, they're all fighting for different purposes. One guy has money issues, and they kind of threaten his son if he doesn't do what they tell him to do. I talked about the mom, being shot. So one of them is there to avenge his mother's death because he thought his mom had abandoned him. He didn't know that she didn't abandon him. His storyline was pretty dope because um, he was turning into your boy from The Wire, right? He was turning into a straight gangster. Like once he figured out he had a power, he was like, "Yo, we about to take over the whole city." Like they were just a little neighborhood gang, and he was ready to take over that whole area and then take over the city. Like, yo, we trying to control the drug trade, all of that shit. Like we about to take over the block. Um, and you had this one kid that ran really fast, and that's really his power is he's super fast. I think he also does something with lightning though. I'm not sure about what that's all about right now. I guess we'll get more into that down the road. And then you had another girl that a woman that she was able to use like telekinesis. So she didn't have to, physically touch you, move objects, move people. Super strong. She's one of the stronger ones. Um, so again, it was it was definitely a well done show. Even the end was dope where one of the villains of the show, we find out towards the end that he has a supercell as they're trying to take him out, and they eventually are able to kill him. And before he dies though, he shoots his gun and ultimately kills the guy's fiance that was supposed to die on July 9th. She gets struck with the bullet and dies right then and there. So like I told you, when you go back and you alter history, which he had done, it doesn't necessarily mean she's going to live. She could die sooner, and she did. So that kind of sent him over the edge. At that point now, he was all about preserving life, and we can find another way. We don't have to kill people. Once she died, he snapped. And he's like, nah, we finna kill everybody, and we getting to the bottom of this. And I don't care who we got to kill to get there. And so his whole mindset has changed now. So um it's a really good show. I loved how intricate they got with some of the details and the plots. I like how they tied all the storylines in together. They left enough loose ends where you go, okay, there's some things you need to tie up in season 2, making you look forward to that. I knew there was a lady in there that's taking care of sickle cell patients, and she just seemed shady. My wife, from the first time she entered the show, my wife said something's up with that lady. And sure enough, we get to the end, and she's the one running that whole agency that's underground, that's housing these Supercell patients. She's the one orchestrating all of this. And the reason that she has access to the sickle cell people is that she runs that whole entire organization. So it's almost like a breeding ground for her, so to speak. So she's wicked. Like, she came down and she killed a guy because he didn't get the job done, several times. And it was crazy because she brought him back to life. He was dead. And one of the prisoners, we're going to call them, that they have down there housing, it's a little girl. She's able to heal and bring people back to life. She's able to heal people, and she's able to, bring people who are dead back to life, heal their injuries, make them whole again. So they had her bring this man back to life only for the head boss, for her to come down there, lecture him, and then kill him for good. Right. Like, that was crazy, right? I was like, okay. So I can see why, you're running the show. So it's a really good show. It's one season. It just came out not too long ago. And I'm telling you, if you're into superhero shows, it is definitely worth your time. 6 episodes, roughly 50 minutes. So just call it 6 hours. We essentially binged it in one setting. Like, that's how my wife operates. I think the 6 made her a little bit more gung ho, because most shows on Netflix are at a bare minimum 8 episodes. So I looked at her, I said, the 6 has you feeling real brolic, doesn't it? And she was like, yep. So we sat there and watched all 6 of the episodes, and it was really good. So the name of the show is Supercell. SUPACELL. Supercell. It's on Netflix. Do yourself a favor, check it out. It's really good. I guess we could do this real quick. So we did watch Axel F, and I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel because Coming to America too. It was all right. It's something that I'll never ever watch again. It does not have rewatch value for me, right? Sometimes when you have a classic and it's sat and it's stewed for long enough, sometimes I just feel like the best thing to do is just to let it be. So I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about Axel F, but here's the thing. I didn't love Beverly Hills Cop 3. It was okay. It wasn't my favorite. It doesn't hold rewatch value for me. I've watched Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2 8 million times apiece. I can't tell you two things that happened in 3 though. So me and my wife were sitting there talking about, some of the plot from Axel F. And I'm like, I don't know if this happened in 3 or not. I don't remember 3. I can tell you everything about 2 and 1. I can't tell you anything about 3. So we sit down and we turn on Axel F. And normally my wife is on social media and she's able to tell me what people are saying about it before we sit down and watch. And she had no intel on Axel F. She was like, I haven't heard anything yet. It came out on the 3rd. I think we might have watched it on either the 4th or the 5th. So it still wasn't really out there for a lot of people to be commenting on at the time, I guess. So we sat down, we watched it. It was pretty good. It was better than what I thought it was going to be. And I think I had a really low bar set for it. So it wasn't going to take much to clear the bar that I had set for it, but it went above and beyond the Call of Duty for me. Like once you get past the second installment of a movie series, or in this case, we had a trilogy, and now you're going into the 4th installment. After 2, I always find it hard for you to keep up the level of quality that is necessary to keep me engaged, i.e. Rush Hour. After the second one, that third one, I'm good, and they're talking about making a 4th one, and I didn't really enjoy the third one all that much. Don't know if I need a 4, right? But this gives me hope for a potential Rush Hour 4 because we waited a very long time. The last Beverly Hills Cop was in 1994. We're in 2024. So you're talking 20 years, 30 years, excuse me, 30 years since the last Beverly Hills Cop. So the plot essentially was that Axel now has a daughter. Again, he could have had a daughter in Beverly Hills Cop 3. I don't think he did. He could have had a daughter in Beverly Hills Cop 3. Doubt that he did. But the plot is he has a daughter. They don't get along because she feels like he abandoned her. There were gangs that were threatening her and her mom's life. So he moved them out to California, but he ended up going back to Detroit. It didn't work out. He goes back to Detroit, and he didn't keep in contact with his daughter like he should have. And so they have a strained relationship. She becomes a defense attorney. They kind of tried to make it seem like she became a defense attorney to spite her father, who's a police officer. So the guys that you are supposed to be putting away, I'm trying to get them free, essentially. She said it had nothing to do with him. I beg to differ, but that's nor here nor there. Bottom line is, it was a really good movie. I thought it was well done. I love the fact that they incorporated a lot of the old characters who were still alive. We got both of the old detectives. One had become a chief of police in Beverly Hills. The other had retired because one of the cases that he had worked on, they thought that he thought that the cop was dirty, which he was, and they didn't believe him, and they set everybody free essentially that had been arrested. So he was pissed off and he left the force essentially. So the plot is Axel hears that his daughter is in trouble and goes out to Beverly Hills. From there, she doesn't want him there. He wants to help her. She wants him to go back home. She's okay. I can handle myself. You know how that goes. He ends up Axel never just leaves a situation. He takes vacation, right, to go out to Beverly Hills to stir up some shit. Um, his ex partner from Detroit is now his boss, and which is Paul Reiser. I think that's his name. Um, he's his boss, but he's retiring now. And he retired because Axel, if you the very beginning of the movie, he's going to a Detroit Red Wings game, and the guy that's there with him is another officer, and he's all excited that Axel's going to a game with him, but Axel's really there to bust up this little ring that they've got, this like larceny ring that they got going on where they're breaking in and they're stealing the player's stuff and this, that, and the third. So he sees it happening. He knows it's going to go down, and he busts the thing up. But of course, in typical Axel Foley fashion, he's destroying half the city to do it, like he did in Beverly Hills Cop 1, where he was driving in this big ass truck, running into cars and every goddamn thing, and all of this shit. What did he steal this time? It was a ice, one of those ice clearers for the street with the big ass shovel at the end, right? And yeah, he's just plowing through stuff and chasing these guys down, and ultimately, of course, he catches them. And so his chief falls on the sword for him, and he retires. And so he goes out to LA because he finds out his daughter's in trouble. And one thing leads to another. What the hell is the name of the damn detective? Um, the one that always uses the damn shotgun. The one that always is talking about you can never have enough firepower. What is his damn name? I know one is Bogomil, and I can't remember the other one. I think Bogomil is the one that became the sergeant. I think I can't think of their names. I don't know why I can't think of their names, but he gets kidnapped by the bad guys, essentially. And so he's out of the movie till the very end, where they go and rescue him. And my man from Transformers, something Gordon Levitt, he or Hewitt, whatever his damn name is, he is the co-star of the movie, and he's a hell of a shot in this movie. I mean, he had some Deadeye type accuracy. He was nasty with it, but ultimately they go and they rescue the detective. They had kidnapped his daughter, so they had to rescue her. They do all of that stuff, and happily ever after is how it ultimately goes. You know how these things happen. Axel takes a bullet for his daughter at the end, ends up in the hospital. She takes care of him, that sort of thing. And that's kind of how the movie ends. It's a really good movie. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. Billy Rosewood, thank you. It's Taggart and Rosewood. There you go. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Darnell Kelly. Thank you, Kevin, the PRF. Taggart was the police chief, and Billy Rosewood was the officer who ended up becoming a PI. He got very upset and disgruntled with how things were being done, and he left the police office. He left the force to become a PI, and got kidnapped, and they had to save him at the end. So it was really good. I even love the fact, and I told my wife, I'm gonna be upset if they don't have Surge in this movie, right? And I just love how Achwell for I love how he messes his name up. And then he messed up Abbott's name, and he just was all, I just love Serge. I just love Serge, man. It wouldn't have been Beverly Hills Cop without him at some point. I love the fact that they just found a way to weave him in there, give him his little 5 to 10 minutes, let him mess his name up a few times, pronunciate a few words, and get him out of there. And they did that. It was great. I loved it. So that was Axel F. It was really enjoyable. We watched 3 or 4 movies this weekend. We watched Supercell. Nothing. We didn't walk away from any show or movie saying, that wasn't worth the amount of time we just spent watching it. Everything we walked away feeling really good about. So I thought it was really, really well done. Anyway, I digress. Let's get into the reason why you probably showed up. And that, of course, is the gym dropping session. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So, episode 2 of the Giants off-season Hard Knocks took place tonight. They dropped the episode. Remember, every week in the month of July, we're going to get a Giants off-season Hard Knocks episode on Tuesday. So we got one on the 2nd. Today is the 9th. We'll get another one on the 16th, another one on the 23rd, which is my birthday. And then the final episode will be on the 30th of July. So we'll have 5 installments total. This was episode 2. This one focused more on the combine and the process of going through finding the right player for the Giants. It also intermingled a little bit of the Saquon conversation and the Brian Burns situation. They're kind of setting the stage for that. I think we're going to get the Brian Burns trade in episode 3. We're kind of getting to that point. We're working towards free agency. We're not quite there yet, but I think where they left off, we were about a week away from free agency. So we're heading there in the show. So the thing I loved about this particular episode is one of the things I always wonder, because the combine is just so long. Like, yes, you're there for the purposes of work and paying attention to these prospects. And as we saw in the episode, the Giants GM, Joe Shane, said, hey, I'll be right back to his assistant, Brandon Brown. Hey, I'm about to go head over to the Patriots. Like, God damn, they all the way across the way, like all the way around the stadium. They're on the other side of the stadium. I need to holler at them real quick, though. They got the 3rd pick. You know, they had already sat down, and that's something we're going to talk about here in a second. They sat down and interviewed a lot of those players and the quarterbacks in particular. So I think they were impressed with a number of those quarterbacks. And they said to themselves, we would love to have a shot at one of them if an opportunity presents itself. They knew they wanted one of the top 3 guys. And because they had a shot at the other 3, right? The first 3 went 1, 2, 3. And then the next 3 went all after the Giants pick at 6. The next quarterback went off the board at 8, which was Michael Penix Jr. to the Falcons. Then you had McCarthy go at, I think, 10. I think the Vikings traded up to 10 to get him. And then you had the Broncos take Bo Nix at 12. So at the end of the day, they had a chance to take any of the other 3, and they just passed because they wanted one of the top 3 guys in the draft. So he heads over to the Patriots booth and just hollers at their GM, Elliot Wolf, and he's like, hey, look, man, before you make any decisions at 3, if you're interested in coming up off the pick, just hit us up, man. Like, you know, look, I don't need to know your business. I don't need to know what you're going to do with the pick, like what you trying to do, none of that stuff. If you thinking about moving the pick at all, if you're listening, just hit me up. Before you do anything, before you take somebody else's offer, just hit me up. Hit my line first so I can see what's really good. And I just wanted to kind of plant that seed. And he was like, yeah, cool. Yeah, y'all got 6, right? He's like, yeah, we got 6. Okay, bet. So that's the kind of networking that happens at the combine. We hear about this all the time. That's a lot of times that's where trades, the foundation for a trade kind of starts to take place, right? Like the framework of a trade begins at the combine where everyone is, when everyone is there. But I'm also curious as to, look, you're sitting there for 7 hours at a time for 3-4 days in a row. It is just a tedious process. I mean, I'm at home, like I've developed a new way of watching the combine, right? Like I can't sit there and watch the combine as soon as it come. I used to be one of these geeks and nerds that, oh, the combine starts at 9 a.m. in the morning. I got to be ready at 9 o'clock. And I'd sit there and I'd sit through the commercials and all of that good stuff. And I'd literally waste 17 hours of my life that I could never get back. And I always tell you, I watched the NFL scouting combine, so you don't have to, right? Because if I didn't have to, I wouldn't. So it's long. So now what I do is I let the first 2 hours or so of the combine go by, and then I tune in and I fast forward through all the commercials and all the talking and all the extra stuff that I don't need. And I usually don't catch up until like hour 5, which that's fine at that point. It's almost over at that point. But they're sitting there talking and they're bullshitting. And that's what I always wonder, like, what are these conversations? You're not sitting there for 7 hours dead serious the entire time. There's jokes being had, there's, sidebar conversations, you got a whole bunch of different shit going on. And so one time he was like, yo, because Roma Dunze was the only big time receiver. They're at 6. Like, they're not going to be taking some random Joe Schmo receiver, at 6. There were no quarterbacks of note participating. There were no receivers other than Roma Dunze of note participating. So the Giants were like, Joe Shane was like, look, anytime Roma Dunze gets up for anything, make sure I'm paying attention. Get my attention, make sure I'm watching. Because you could be into a whole bunch of shit. But the star of this particular episode was head coach Brian Daboll. He's a character, man. He's an asshole, but he's a character. I like him. I like him a lot. So he's an acquired taste, obviously. He was talking about, remember I told you they ended the last episode, episode 1, with him talking about he could run a 7 flat 40, right? I could run a 7-0 40. And everybody's like, nah, bro, you can't. He's like, yo, you can walk a 7, right? And they're like, absolutely not. You're not walking in 40 yards in 7 seconds. I don't care if you're Chris Paul and you're the greatest speed walker ever. It's not happening, right? So he was like hell bent on getting somebody to side with him. Hey, I could run a 7, right? It was like, nah, bro. He's like, look, you put a plate of damn wings at the other end of the 40. I bet you I'll run that bitch in 7 seconds, right? So then he's like, they're out there, they're watching Worthy, and we were all captivated by Xavier Worthy's 40. And Joe Shane was like, I'd run it again. I remember all of us saying that in the moment. I just didn't think he was going to. And he gets to the second run, he breaks the record. Everybody's hooting and hollering, things of that nature. And Brian Daboll turns to Joe Shane and another guy, and he's like, if I started at the 20 and he started at the regular 40-yard dash start line, think I could beat him? It's like, hell no, you can't beat him. He's like, well, how much of a lead do I have to have? And somebody was like, the 35. I'm like, nah, man, the 30. I think Daboll could muster up enough acceleration at the 30 to get him. It might be close. He definitely win if he only had to go 5 yards. But the 30, I think he could do it. But I don't know. I don't know how fast he accelerates. It might take his ass because, he's a weeble wobbler. It might take him 3 to 5 yards to actually get to where he's actually moving at a high enough rate of speed to keep Xavier Worthy from blowing past him. So it might be the 35. Anyway, that whole sidebar conversation was hilarious. I enjoyed it. And it just gives me a little insight as to what's happening during the combine. It's not always going to be all football talk. You're going to be having some of these light conversations, joking around. You need people like that to be there. If you're going to go to an event like this, you need people that's going to keep it light, bro. You can't be sitting there for 7 hours, like locked in. That would be the worst weekend ever. If I didn't have, I would be that guy though. I would be the one cracking jokes and doing stuff like that. The scouts, this one was heavy on the scouts. Anytime you're talking combine, you always want to give a big up to the scouts. They work so hard. And, I've heard so many people in the industry talk about these scouts and how much work they put in, especially during the fall, acquiring all of this information to present to the coaching staff and the executives. And so, I'm always fascinated when they talk about the players, right? Because we rarely get this raw, um, like when you hear draft analysts talk about players, they're giving you their opinion, but they also, for the most part, not everybody adheres to this, but you also have to keep it somewhat buttoned up, right? Because on one end, you're talking about a kid, 20, 21 years old, 22. On the other end, you're talking about a guy that you may want to interview down the road. You think he's not going to remember you talking shit about him when he was coming out as a, junior or senior into the NFL draft? You think he's not going to remember that? So you got to kind of handle these prospects with kid gloves a lot of time in the media. So, and you don't want to talk down on the kid. You don't want to, hurt someone's draft stock. So you don't really get a lot of that, right? You give your assessment. You may not love this guy's hands as an offensive tackle or offensive lineman. You may not love his feet, you know, as a corner. You may not love his ability to plant and drive and things of that nature. And you'll say that, but rarely do you get the raw version of it, which is what the scouts are going to give you. They're not going to pull any punches. They're going to give you the real on these dudes. And it was fun listening to them go around the room, talk about the quarterbacks, then talk about the receivers. And me being a Commanders fan, Jaden Daniels being my quarterback, I wanted to hear what they had to say about him. They obviously put out a clip earlier that was circulating social media with him on the whiteboard during their combine interview, and that was a part of the episode. Same thing with Drake May, same thing with Caleb Williams, and they did interviews with all the receivers, talked to them, so you got a little bit of insight as to what those guys are and their DNA makeup in those little small clips. And I thought that was all fascinating. I just enjoy that part of it. And I told you this the last time we spoke. I'm starting to realize that I am more fascinated with the roster building aspect and the finding the players. Like that is what I think I enjoy most, more so than talking about training camp and what's going on in 11 on 11s and this, that, and the third. That's cool. It's the roster building and then the actual games for me. All the other stuff is cool, but getting to find the right guy for you and you know listening to Malik Neighbors talk, I wasn't sure if he fit. Like they went into the combine interview saying, hey, look, this kid's super talented, but we got to find out more about him. We're not sure if he fits our locker room or not. They were like, look, Marvin Harrison, he is a legacy kid from Philly, really good dude, not going to cause any issues. Like, we kind of know what we're getting here. Rome Odunze, leader, this, that, and the third. And all of those guys kind of came off as such. With Neighbors, they didn't really know what to expect, and so they asked him some of those questions, like, "All right, so we start off. Uh, how do you handle losing?" And he's like, "Not well at all. Like, I hate losing. I hate losing more than I love winning," which is the the standard and ultimate competitor line. That's my go-to line. I hate losing more than I love winning. I love winning. Y'all know this. I love me some winning. But it's the threat of losing that I fear more than the enjoyment of the thrill of victory. So that's the motivation for me and people who are competitive in any aspect. It's a gift and a curse. But then they asked him, okay, so say we losing and you ain't getting the ball. How you feeling about that? Not good at all. Like, I've gone through all this week of practice. We put in these plays for me to get the rock, and now I'm not getting it, and we losing. Nah, that shit ain't gonna sit well with me. And Brian Dabo was like, "Yeah, okay, good. I want you to be pissed off. I want you to be effing pissed off about that." Because I have a problem, and all I could think of was him chucking that damn tablet at Daniel Jones when he's like, I got some issues, and I get upset, and you just got to find the right way to channel that. I want you to be competitive as a mother, right? And Joe Shane's looking at him like, bro, calm down. You're having a Daniel Jones flashback, and he grabbed his shoulder, and he's probably thinking, yeah, you a damn head case. Anyway, we know that. So it was funny. And one of my favorite lines from this episode was Joe Shane walking out of one of the offices in Indy saying, "We got to find a quality backup quarterback." You know, they had Tyrod these last couple years. We got to find us a quality backup quarterback. So if Dale's not ready to roll at the beginning of the season, we don't start 0-3 and then, expect Daniel to come in and, you know, already be working from a deficit. I'm like, shit, it don't matter. If Daniel Jones is starting week 1, y'all ass starting 0-3. Who gives a shit? That's what I was thinking in my head. Like, if Daniel Jones is your starting quarterback week 1, you're in shit. Anyway, you're in deep, deep doo-doo if Daniel Jones is your week 1 starter. So it really doesn't matter. But, I found that funny. Obviously, they're going to go out and get Drew Lock. But we don't. If you just watching the show, you don't know what happened to the Giants offseason. Then you're like, okay, they're going to try and go get a quarterback, a backup quarterback. One of the really fascinating pieces of this episode was the conversation that Joe. So the episode starts off with him finding out, Joe Shane, the GM of the New York Giants, finding out that the salary cap is going to be $255.4 million, right? Which is $15 million more than what they had projected. They were working with a $240 million salary cap, were the Giants, when they were brainstorming, kind of figuring out how much money they'd have to play with and what they could do, who they could sign, who they would let walk, XYZ. For it to come out at 255, they were like, whoa, we got a lot more money to play around with now. We can really do some things, right? So they got excited. And one of the things they talked about was, now that we got all this money, you could pay Saquon, but you get the sense, right, that Joe Shane mentally had already moved on from Saquon when he turned down that lucrative multi-year contract last offseason. I think Joe Shane said, to hell with him. Like, so let's go back in the episode a bit. He's getting ready to prep for the combine interview. Every general manager does a head coach. They both do a combine press conference with the national media. It's not your local media, the people you talk to all the time that you know on a first name basis. These are the national media members. So you're going to get much more broad questions. They're going to ask the low-hanging fruit questions because they're coming from a national, whereas a local media member might ask you about Darren Waller. Hey, what's going on with Waller? The national media doesn't give a shit about Darren Waller, right? They care about Saquon. Is he going to be re-signed? Are you going to franchise tag him? Are you going to tag him and try to trade him like the Chiefs did L'Jarius Sneed? What's going on with Saquon? They want to know about Daniel Jones. Hey, you're sitting at 6. This is a quarterback-rich draft. Are you going to try to trade up? Are you going to stay there and take a quarterback? What's the status of Daniel Jones? These are the questions they're going to ask. These are the things they care about because that's the national media, right? So he gets prepped on this. And, the saying is there's always a level of truth in a joke, right? When somebody tells a joke and they say something that's funny, it may be pseudo-offensive, but it's funny. There's some truth in there, right? It's up to you if you want to parse through it to try to figure out what part they were serious about. But he's sitting there prepping with what I would assume is the Giants PR guy, right? And he's like, all right, so this is the national media. So these are the kind of questions you're going to get. They're going to ask you about Saquon, his situation. So he prepped for it. And then it was funny because they showed him prepping and what he was being, talking about he was going to say. And then boom, they flashed to him in the press conference actually saying those same words. So you can tell that they prep for this. They know that these questions are going to come up, or they try to anticipate what's going to be asked. You don't want to get caught off guard, as a general manager up there. So you want to try to anticipate what's going to be asked of you so you can have the right answer, right, so to speak, the buttoned up, politically correct answer that doesn't show your hand, doesn't give a tell. So he and then so the first question was about Saquon. Are you going to franchise tag him? Yada yada yada. And then the PR guy was like, they're going to come with the follow up, right? They're going to ask you about franchise tagging him and whether it's a good look for Saquon or not. And so he was joking, right? Joe Shane was joking. He was like, well, I tried to give Saquon a boatload of money last offseason. He turned me down. So I really don't care how Saquon feels about being franchise tagged. And the PR guy looked at him and he's like, because Joe Shane kept a straight face when he said the shit, right? And the PR guy looked at him and he starts smiling. He's like, I wouldn't say that if I were. And Jose's like, man, bro, chill. I'm not going to say that shit, man. But that's how he felt, though. That was some real shit. That was real spill. Like, that's how he really felt. Like, bro, I offered you more money than he ultimately got from the Philadelphia. It's no different than the Le'Veon Bell situation. He didn't want to take the Steelers' multi-year offer. He thought he could get more. He sat out an entire season. He came back the next year, went to the Jets, got less money than he would have gotten had he signed the deal with Pittsburgh, and he never really was the same back after that, right? We'll see if history repeats itself with Saquon. But the Giants offered him more money last offseason than he got with the Eagles, and I think Joe Shane had already mentally moved on from Saquon. Like, unless Saquon was going to take a team-friendly deal, that was the only way he was going to be back. He was going to have to take something that made sense for the Giants, kept them flexible in terms of the moves they can make. Because when you hear teams start talking about shit like, well, what's more important to you? You want to come here, leave a legacy, be in the Ring of Fame, Ring of Honor, or you want to go leave for an extra meal or two somewhere else. That means I'm trying to shortchange you. That's what that means. I'm trying to sell you on ancillary other things outside of money to get you to stay here because I'm not going to pay you more than somebody else is out there. But in Joe Shane's mind, I already offered you a deal that you should have taken and you didn't take it. And so I don't really care to negotiate that kind of deal with you this offseason. And so it was funny when he ended up talking to his agent. Joe Shane was on the phone with Saquon's agent, and he was talking in past tense like, yo, this shit is over. And I'm like, yo, Joe, you sound like you over this, man. And so it prompted Saquon's agent to say, hey, when you at home at night by yourself in your own thoughts, are you saying to yourself, I'm ready to move on from this kid? And Joe Shane was like, nah, it ain't even like that. It's really a situation where, we just want to make sure we do what's best for us. And we want to find out what's fair, value market for him, right? Or fair market value, excuse me, for Saquon. Like, we don't want to overpay. We want him to go out there, see what the league says his value is. And then we want the opportunity to match. That's it. And his agent was probably like, all right, bet. So he's like, yo, I'm about to call Saquon and talk to him real quick. So he gets on the phone with Saquon, and he was talking in past tense with Saquon, like, hey, if this thing doesn't go the way that we want it to, we just want you to know we really appreciate what you've done for this organization. Like, he's talking to him as if, bro, we're not going to resign you. Then I felt like he did the disingenuous GM thing, which he's supposed to do on Xavier McKinney. That was another one of the talking points for the press conference with the national media. He was like, they're going to ask you about X. And yeah, he threw up a whole bunch of fluff stats. He's never missed a game and this, that, and the third, or he played 100% of the snaps last year or whatever. They were never going to re-sign him. They were never going to give Xavier McKinney the money he was looking for. That was out of the question. Like, he was the absolute last option. Like, if they couldn't get Christian Wilkins, they couldn't trade for Brian Burns, they didn't get Saquon back. All right, now we can deal with Xavier McKinney. That's how that was. Like, he was all the way at the bottom of the totem pole. If everything falls through and we still got all this money, all right, we can give some of it to X. But they were perfectly fine with him and Saquon both leaving. In their minds, they were like, nah, we can move on from both of these dudes. That's how I feel. Joe Shane had made up his mind when Saquon didn't take the deal last year. I mean, unless Saquon wants to be here, I'm off of it. I'm done, right? As far as X is concerned, I don't think he ever thought about bringing him back. They weren't going to pay him the kind of money he was looking for. So, I thought this was another great episode. I told you, I think this is going to ultimately, if this is a test run to see if there's an appetite for this, I hope that people are watching. Look, geeks like me are going to watch. It's the lay fan that they got to try to get interested in this thing. I don't see them saying, there wasn't enough interest, let's not do this next year. They're going to pick another team next year, I think, to do this. And I think I'm going to enjoy this Hard Knocks more so than any of the other two. Like, the in-season one is cool. Not my thing necessarily. It's cool to see them playing a game and going through the week, but that one's more focused on, players and their families and their, I don't care about any of that stuff, to be honest with you. Not to sound like an ass. I don't care about that. It's cool to humanize the players and, oh, he's got 2 daughters and this, that, and that's cool. That's a part of the storyline. I just want the geeky football nerdy shit. That's what you get in the offseason. So I'm loving it, man. I don't know if you can tell, but ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Anyway, I digress. Episode 2 was just as good as episode 1. Can't wait for episode 3. I think we're going to get the Brian Burns trade. Saquon's going to leave and go to the Eagles. I want to see the reaction to that. And then we're going to get closer to the NFL draft, and we're probably going to hear some more from the scouts as they make their case for certain players to be selected. All of that good stuff. Can't wait to see it all unfold. So let's get to social media maneuvers. I'm a midnight marauder. Y'all know what it is. Let's get to the comment section, but y'all know how this works. If you are out there and you want your comment read on the air, super chats are the best way to do that, to have your comments read on the air. You can jump straight to the front of the line and ensure that your comment is read. We'll get to as many comments as we can that time permits, but I can't assure you that we will get to your comment, even if you use the hashtag. But if you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to get that done. With that said, I do want to throw this out as a conversation starter before I get to the comment section. Are there any teams that you think exist in the NFL as we head into the season? Remember, keep this in mind when it comes to the NFL. When we have these conversations, there is no sport of the major 3, NBA, MLB, NFL, the major 3 sports in North America. Of the 3, parity does not exist anymore in any of those sports than the NFL. Any team can come out of anywhere and do damage. Generally speaking, the best teams are going to end up making it to the Super Bowl, right? The cream rises to the top. Keep rising to the top. Give it all you got. The cream is going to rise to the top. However, you can have a team like the Houston Texans do what they did last year. And had the Texans been slightly more effective and efficient on offense against the Ravens, they could have won that game. The Ravens offensively were not good in that game. They were not good. The problem was neither were the Texans. They felt like they were in over their head in that game. They were young. They were dumb. They didn't, when I say young and dumb, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But they were young and they were dumb and they didn't know any better. They didn't know that they weren't supposed to be in the AFC divisional round of the postseason. They didn't know, but they also didn't know how to conduct themselves when they got there. And so, but just the fact that they were even there speaks to the parity in the NFL, right? Granted, they play in a pretty poor division. Doesn't matter. They didn't have to win their division and win a playoff game and push the Ravens, the number one seeded Baltimore Ravens, not to the brink, but they pushed them good enough in that ball game. And we've seen teams like the Cardinals back in like '08 come out of nowhere, right? And make it all the way to the Super Bowl. You know, we saw the Rams do it with Kurt Warner, win the Super Bowl. Fairy tale ending, right? Hands on the head. Tom Brady, hands on the head. Where did these Patriots come from? With Tom Brady at quarterback, right? It's a lot tougher to do that now, but because we've seen generational quarterbacks come and kind of suffocate the league here. Brady had this illustrious, dominant run that we'll never see duplicated again. As I say that, Mahomes is on a torrid pace right now, but I don't think they're going to be able to do what the Patriots did, because I think at some point Andy Reid's going to call it quits. I think that's what's going to ultimately derail this thing. Before Kelsey, I think they got his replacement on the roster now, and Jared Wiley. I think he's going to be a monster. Watch what I tell you. But they'll replace. They'll have guys step in. They lost Tyreek Hill, so what? Let's keep the party going, right? They'll find a guy that can come in. He won't be Travis Kelce, but he'll be good enough. They got Xavier Worthy now. They'll figure it out offensively. They've retooled the offensive line several times during this stretch in Mahomes' career. Defensively, they've been up, they've been down. They were excellent. That's the reason they won the Super Bowl last year. I think Andy Reid's going to be the reason that thing doesn't go for 20 years like the, Belichick and Brady reign of terror lasted, the better part of 2 decades. But at the end of the day, it was Brady and now it's Mahomes that are it's almost like Jordan in the NBA during his era. Like, you want to win a championship? Sorry. I go through Mike, and that's not going to happen, right? If you were in the East, you knew where you weren't making it to the finals because you had to go through Mike and his Bulls. You weren't going to be able to do it. And if you were on the West side of the bracket, you could get to the finals, but it didn't matter whether you were the Jazz or the Blazers or the Lakers or the Sonics. You were going home empty-handed, right? Same with LeBron. If you were in the East for about a decade, sucks to be you. Sorry. Must be nice, but you're not getting past LeBron and you're not going to the NBA Finals. So that's kind of what it's like in the NFL, so to speak. But that's on one side of the bracket. Anything can happen. And unlike the NBA, and this is why the NFL is set up for parity, unlike Major League Baseball, unlike the NBA, the best teams always win because you have to win a series. You can win a game, but can you win 4 before the team that's supposedly better than you? Can you win 4 of them before they win 4? Doubt it. In football, you just got to be better 1 game. That is it. On that day, you just need to be better. I think the biggest case in point there is the 2007 Super Bowl with the Patriots and the Giants. Those teams play each other 10 times. The Patriots probably beat them 9 times. That one time, they didn't beat them. Thank God for the New York Giants. We would not have been able to stand the Patriots being undefeated. But that's nor here nor there. Is there a dark horse? I said all of that to say this. Is there a dark horse team this year bubbling beneath the surface? Nobody's really talking about the prospects of this team hoisting a Lombardi or just having an opportunity to play for it or even getting to the championship game is enough in certain instances. Like, is there a team that nobody's really talking about in that light that has a chance to potentially make a run at an AFC or NFC championship game and potentially have a chance to play for a Lombardi? Is there a team or 2 or 3 off the top of the dome? I saw earlier in the comment section, somebody say the Detroit Lions. I'm like, did you not watch the NFL last year? They were playing in the NFC championship game last season. How could they be a dark horse? They were literally 5 minutes away from the Super Bowl just this past season. How are they a dark horse? They're probably among the top Super Bowl favorites in the NFC, probably top 3 to 5, right? They're not a dark horse. It'd have to be a team that didn't win their division a season ago. It'd have to be a team that either didn't win their division but made the playoffs, or really, when I think of dark horse, you didn't make the playoffs at all last year. Like, nobody's even checking for you right now. If you made the playoffs, at least there's already evidence and proof that, hey, you have what it takes to get there. And maybe this year, after the experience you gained last year, you're ready to do damage. It's hard for me to look at the Packers as a dark horse, even though I don't think a lot of people expect them to win the Super Bowl. They were within 7 minutes of advancing to the NFC Championship game. So you could argue they outplayed the San Francisco 49ers in that divisional round loss. They just, similar to the Texans, they didn't have enough experience to know how to win that game. They should have won that game. So hard for me to look at the Packers as a dark horse, but the Bears are certainly a dark horse. They got a rookie quarterback. I can't see them winning, enough games to qualify for the championship game, right? I could see them making the playoffs, and dare I say, winning a playoff game. I wouldn't be shocked. Similar to the Texans last year with a rookie quarterback, I wouldn't be shocked if the Bears snuck into the playoffs. Unlike the Texans, I don't see them winning that division. I don't see them being better than the Lions. I don't see them being better than the Packers, although they could be better than the Packers, and it wouldn't surprise me, wouldn't shock me. But I find it hard to believe that they're going to be better than the Lions. And so I personally think Chicago is a team that you'd have to throw in that conversation because they've built that roster to compete right now. It's not a typical, oh, we had the first pick in the draft type of roster. Remember, the Bears were actually the 9th pick in this year's draft. They were not the number 1 pick. They had the number 1 pick because of the trade they made last year with Carolina to allow the Panthers to come up to number 1 to select Bryce Young. So they had the number 1 pick because of Carolina, not because of their own doing. But they don't have a typical number 1 overall pick roster. They built that thing up, and they're ready to compete now. So that's a team in an NFC that I think is still wide open, even though the 49ers seem to have, along with, the Eagles and the Cowboys, seem to have a pretty good grasp of what it takes to get to the playoffs. And in the case of the 49ers and even the Eagles to a lesser degree and extent, they know how to get it done when they get there. The NFC is wide open. Anybody can get in there and make some noise. I mean, the 49ers are far from invincible. They should have been beaten twice in both of their playoff games heading to the Super Bowl. They should have lost to Green Bay in the divisional round. They should have lost to the Detroit Lions. So they really, really were fortunate that those two teams couldn't close the show, right? But another team that I think about is Atlanta. I know you're gonna kill me for this. Kirk Cousins, he's trash. He'll never win big. I think that's a really solid Atlanta Falcons roster. He's a guy that I look at and say, if he were on their team last year, the Falcons not only make the playoffs, I could have seen them winning a game or two in the playoffs. I mean, Baker Mayfield beat and the Bucks beat the Eagles, and then they turned around and had the Lions on the ropes. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying, I know. Okay, you don't have to beat me up. So that's another team that I think about as a dark horse that could come out of essentially nowhere. I'm not a Derek Carr fan, so I can't see the Saints doing anything of note. I don't think that the Cardinals are a threat to do anything. I don't think Seattle is either. Just talking about some other teams that are, kind of bubbling under the surface in the NFC Just don't see any of those teams doing anything noteworthy. Should go to the AFC. It's so loaded over there. It's tough, right? Because you got to go through the entire gauntlet to survive that conference. Like, if you don't get Burrow, you get Jackson. If you don't get Jackson, you get Allen. If you don't get Allen, you get who am I forgetting? Now you got to deal with Stroud. You know, you might even have to deal with Trevor Lawrence. Um, I don't even want to put Tua in the conversation, but that's a prolific offense. And I obviously left out Mahomes on purpose because you got to get through all of them to get to him, right? You find a way to navigate, the two-time MVP in Lamar Jackson, a guy that's been in any season that he's finished the season, start to finish, he's been no worse than AFC Championship game in Joe Burrow. Josh Allen has flirted with MVP talk a couple times in his career. He's been to the AFC Championship game. He's been to the playoffs just about every single year of his career. Since year 2, I believe. He's been to the playoffs every single year. And he's been a machine. And this is what you have to deal with. There's also Deshaun Watson. I still don't love him in Cleveland, but he won games before he got hurt last year, right? And they continue to improve that roster, and that's a filthy defense. So if you can just get something out of that offense, look out, right? And they should be getting Chubb back this year, so that's going to help them immensely. It's just so loaded out there. It's just ridiculous. And then there's the Chargers that nobody's talking about. Yeah, they play in that division with Kansas City, and I know I talked about them already. And Harbaugh's going to come in there, and I've already said this. Harbaugh, everywhere he goes, winning follows. I don't know. It may not be a dark horse for a lot of people, but for where they were at the end of last season and the lack of success that they've had with Herbert, a lot of people always love to look at Herbert's win-loss record. And this is the guy you're talking about? Well, clearly you haven't been watching football. All right. You haven't been watching the Chargers, at least, because you would know. I'm not telling you that he's the second coming of John Elway or anything like that. I'm not telling you that he's the best thing since sliced bread, but what I am telling you is he's damn good. And if he played on a team that was better coached, if he played on a team that had better defensive prowess and that wasn't giving up 35 points, it seems like, on a annual or weekly basis, his record would look a lot better. He would have been in playoff games a lot more. And hell, I know he didn't play great in that playoff loss to Jacksonville, but the defense had a lot to do with them opening up that lead. They were up, 27 to nothing or 27-7? No, it had to be 27-7. Because if it was 27-0, no, it still wouldn't have qualified for the biggest comeback in NFL history. It might have been 27-0 in playoff history. Either way, they blew that lead. He did not play well, but the defense didn't have to give up 28 points to lose that game, or however many they ultimately gave up. The defense didn't have to do that. Whatever the case may be, I think the Chargers are one of those teams that you have to look out for. But my ultimate dark horse is a team that made the playoffs last year. They were so abysmal as a playoff team, though. I had forgotten that they even made the playoffs. Okay. Aaron Rodgers is another one. Thank you, Rick Derula, that you have to look out for in the AFC. It's just a gauntlet of quarterbacks and teams. Obviously, he has to stay healthy. My ultimate dark horse team is the Pittsburgh Steelers, because what we know of Mike Tomlin, and Steelers fans get upset when we talk about his, record and this crazy streak that he has of never finishing a season below 500. They don't want to hear that shit because it hasn't netted them any playoff victories in like 9 years or whatever. It feels like forever for them. They are spoiled. right? They're spoiled brats. That's what happens when you've only had 3 coaches over the last 70 years and you've got the most Super Bowl rings in NFL history. You get spoiled. So, well, they had the most Super Bowl rings. So they have 6, or do they have 7? Hmm. Bradshaw won 4 and Ben won 2. So they have 6. Um they're spoiled. The Patriots have how many? 7, right? No, Brady has 7. The Patriots have 6. So they're tied at the top of the NFL food chain in terms of rings. So I think with that defense, with Tomlin's ability to get the most out of whomever's on the field, that defense and just some competent quarterback play. And I don't know if Russell Wilson's going to provide that for them or not. I really don't. He's looked awful these last 2 years. And I almost want to just chalk it up to Denver. It just wasn't a good environment nor situation for him. I think he got a little bit um, big-headed, right? That first year he went in there, big man on campus. I'm running the show. I got my people in the building. I got my own parking spot. It was a nasty situation. Sean Payton came in and was like, "Yo, this is." I had a lot of cleaning up to do when I first got here. Right. Second year, I just don't think he was a great fit for Sean Payton's offense. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall before that season even got underway. Like he's not going to be a great fit here. So even though they started out really bad, they won like 5 in a row and like 5 out, 6 out of 7 or something like that. And before you knew it, you looked up, they were right in the dead heat of that wild card race. But, obviously they faltered down the stretch. Russ gets benched the final 2 games of the season. It signaled them waving the white flag and essentially saying that, "Hey, we made a big, 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 big mistake." One of the biggest we've ever seen in NFL history. To trade what they traded for Russell Wilson, to give him the contract that they gave him, and then to have to turn around and eat that money to get rid of him. It'll go down as one of the worst trades in NFL history. That said, um, it's the Steelers' gain. They're paying him almost league minimum right now because he's still being paid by Denver. So he could take next to nothing in terms of a base salary, which allows them to build up their roster, which they have this offseason. They were still looking to do that with Brandon Ayuk, but they weren't able to, find a way to get him. But I like the fact that they traded for Dante Jackson. They had to give up Deontay Johnson to get Dante Jackson, but I think it's they need cornerback play in Pittsburgh. And so now you got Porter Jr. on one side, Dante Jackson on the other side. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick manning up that safety position. We know what they can do, off the edge with Highsmith and TJ Watt. And they're a problem, man. The Steelers are a problem. And then they went out and signed Patrick Queen in free agency. If I'm not mistaken, I think they might have drafted another linebacker. I mean, they're loaded, man. They're loaded. George Pickens looks like a bona fide stud number 1 wide receiver. They got stuff, and I think they still got Allen Robinson. I don't even know if that means anything anymore. I'm not sure. Pat Fryermuth is really good. They drafted the kid Washington out of Georgia a couple years ago. So they got tight ends. We know what they have at the running back position with Najee Harris. I just think they're a really, and then they drafted another running back that I really like, I think, this year, right? A guy that I think has a little bit of speed too to add to that mix. I just think it's a well-rounded squad that's got a coach that's going to maximize the talent that they have. If they can get anything out of the quarterback position, look out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Iron sharpens iron, and they play in one of the toughest divisions in football. If you can make it out of that division, you can make it anywhere. So I think the Steelers right now are the best dark horse team. And again, they made the playoffs last year, but who was checking for the Steelers last year? Who's checking for the Steelers right now? Nobody. You know, nobody's checking. As far as everybody's concerned, Russ is washed. He's washed. So nobody's expecting the Steelers to do anything. We'll see. I'm not telling you that he's going to upgrade their situation to the point where they're a Super Bowl team, but if they can get Russ to turn back the hands of time, if they can get Russ to play the kind of football, and I think it's still in there. I think you have to build a system around Russ's strengths. Um, if they can get him to play the kind of football we know he's capable of playing, look out. And then they got that whole Cordell Stewart / thing going with Justin Fields. Are you kidding me? Look out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section real quick and see what you guys are talking about. The Blackout B. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Blackout B. Or excuse me, just thank you for the super chat. Who writes, what it do, Lou? What's going on, Blackout B? He says, rip to Vikes cornerback Kyrie Jackson. That was a sad state of affairs. Killed in a car accident over the weekend. Him, I think a couple of his college buddies were driving late night. Drunk drive. I want to say the driver was drunk. I don't know all of the details. But hit them. Kyrie was in the passenger seat, and he did not survive. No one in that car, I don't think, survived. Of course, the drunk driver did, though, which never ceases to amaze me. But they've given us the scientific reason as to why people who are high or drunk that cause accidents rarely perish in these accidents. It's just crazy, you know, to see someone's life, you know, cut short like that. You didn't even do anything wrong, you know. You're just driving home late at night, early wee hours of the morning, minding your business, and bam, just like that, gone, you know. Sad state of affairs, man. And those are the kinds that make your heart sink because, you know, this kid yet to play in the NFL. He's this close to achieving his dream, you know, just got drafted. I remember when Corey Ballantyne for the Giants a few years back got shot like the day after he got drafted or whatever. And I was just, and he didn't die, but, you know, it's a scary situation. You're just like, whoa, like, bro, it just reminds me of Len Bias, right? Len Bias, you know, gets drafted by the Boston Celtics. You know, he's back at Maryland where he's a big man on campus, and everybody's like, yo, Lynn, this is crazy. You're going to play with Larry Bird and Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale and Dennis Johnson. And like, could you imagine how many championships they would have won if Len Bias doesn't pass away? That's crazy that they were even able to be in a position to draft him with how good they were. That's crazy. That's a sidebar, though. And then before he could even take the court, he loses his life. Now, that was self-inflicted, obviously. But still, it doesn't make it any less tragic, you know. Just hate to see, you know, young lives lost, especially when you've worked this hard to get to the position that you're in, and just like that, it's taken from you. So thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Kyrie Jackson and the other two involved in this accident who did expire as well. And you just hate to see it, man. And as someone who has had people that I care about pass away in similar fashions. Just had a cousin 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, pass away. Similar situation. Driving to work, early stages of the morning. Um, 2-lane road, right? One going one way, one going the other way. You get somebody driving fast, loses control of their car, hits your head on, boom, game over. Drunk driver killed my buddy. I already told you guys about that. Former baseball teammate. That shit never goes away. You know what I mean? So when I hear something like this, it hits close to home for me. So that's a tough, bitter pill to swallow, for sure. Um, see if there's anything here. John Wynn, do I watch Dragon Ball? No, I don't watch Dragon Ball. Says, what's the update on Antonio Brown? John, I know you're a younger guy. I think you're a young guy. I think you told me this before, but like, it feels like you kind of like stuck in like 2016 or something. Like you said, what's the deal with Antonio Brown? Like he's an active player or something. That man's been out of the league for like 5 years. Um, I'm just gonna keep going. And then he was the one that talked about the Lions being the dark horse. Nah, brother. Nah, brother. Ghost Rider says, I'm glad they brought back the gold pants, talking about the Commanders. I did a quick little show on the fact that they brought back the gold pants. And I'm excited that they brought them back as well. And they actually look really good. They actually look better, in my opinion, than they did when we wore them with the Redskins jerseys. They kind of looked a little out of place with the Redskins jersey because there just wasn't a lot of gold in the Redskins uniform. Whereas with these Commander uniforms, there's so much gold in it that it allows that to kind of bring out the gold in the uniform. So I actually think it's not a bad setup. It's not a bad look. So I'm looking forward to seeing the fellas rocking it on the field. And I didn't have a problem with the two pants that they already had with the burgundy uniforms. My only issue is we just suck in the burgundy on burgundy. We just for whatever reason we can't win. It seems like we doesn't know how to win, So anything to offset that, I'm all for it. And I love the gold. A lot of people wanted a stripe. They were really hung up on the fact that there's no stripe. Like, oh, all I need is a stripe now. And I'm like, yeah, stripe would have been fine, but um, I'm not too hell bent on the stripe. If they had one, it'd be dope. But they want to be different. They don't want to just take elements from the last uniform. Nike's in charge now, so they want to put their own stamp on it, right? So Samuel S writes, do you think JD5 will be a top 5 QB in the next couple of years? I can't make that statement now. We haven't even seen him playing a game. And to call him a top 5, I mean, there's some really good quarterbacks, and most of them are young. You got Burrow, you got Jackson, you got Mahomes, you got Herbert. I mean, Hurts is, making a name for himself. He's going to have to bounce back this year. I think some people are doubting him. We'll see how he does with another new offensive coordinator and system. But I mean, that's just to name a few. There are a lot of really good quarterbacks in this league. I don't even know if I named Josh Allen, and Burrow and all of those guys. Brock Purdy looks like a player, right? Like he may not have the talent of a lot of the guys I mentioned, but he's a winner. He finds a way to get it done. So, I mean, this league is littered with a ton of talented young passers. Jaden Daniels would have to come in and really stamp himself. And CJ Stroud, another one that came in and announced himself. You know, Trevor Lawrence, we'll see how he matures. I think the jury's still kind of out on him a bit, but he did get paid. So there's a ton of young, talented passers in this league. Jaden Daniels will have to come in and just find his way. It's hard to say in the next couple of years he'll be top 5. Too many really good quarterbacks to say that. I just want him to come in here and if we're having a conversation about him being in the top 10, and we got our guy. That's all that I'm looking forward to be honest with you. Darnell Kelly says, watching stuff with my wife is hard. She falls asleep 5 minutes in on everything. Yeah, that's rough. My sister is like that, where, you turn something on and boom, she's gone, right? If you know that's how your wife operates, then you don't even bother trying to, incorporate her in what you're about to watch. You just pick something, and if she's like, I don't want to watch that, you just go, you're gonna fall asleep anyway. What difference does it make? So what I find is if you challenge people, so this is my mindset. So it doesn't work on everybody, but it's a Jedi mind trick. If you want results, you have to challenge people to give you different results. So in your case, Darnell, this is what you do the next time. And you may have tried this already, but this is what I would do if I were you. The next time you guys sit down to watch something, don't ask her opinion. Just pick something. Pick something you want to watch. Don't give her any input. Pick it, and then she's probably gonna say, I don't want to watch that, or you didn't ask me if I wanted to watch that. And you just look at her with this incredulous look, this look of disdain on your face, and you go, what difference does it make if I ask you what you want to watch? You're just gonna fall asleep in the first 5 minutes anyway. Then I'm stuck watching something, or I gotta find something else to watch. And then she's gonna go, no, that's not true, and which it is, right? Or if she's one of those people that understands who she is, she's gonna go, you're right. And if she's one of those determined people, she's gonna try to prove you wrong. Okay, all right, I'm gonna prove it to you. Let's find something else to watch, something I want to watch too, and I'm not gonna fall asleep. She's gonna try. I don't know if she's gonna be able to do it. If she doesn't care, then it's not gonna work. So you have to get someone that is motivated by being challenged, but that can be a pretty tough situation. Um, Larry Alderman says, should I watch The Boys? I can't. I'm not the one to ask for that. So you guys already know how I feel about The Boys. My son is desperately trying to get me to watch that series. He's asking everybody around, like, isn't it a good show? Isn't it a good? I'm like, bro, it doesn't matter who you ask. It's probably an excellent show. And I've heard nothing but good things about the show from everyone that has told me about it. I don't have any desire to watch, not after the one episode that I was exposed to. You couldn't have exposed me to a worst episode if you wanted me to indulge in the series. You messed up, and it's irreparable damage that can't be reversed. I'm good. But I've heard nothing but good things, Larry. So that might be right up your alley. I've heard nothing but good things about The Boys. Darnell Kelly says, I wish Inspector Todd was still alive yelling at Axel from the old folks' home. Yeah, he probably passed away, but I mean, I don't know. Was he in the third one? I couldn't tell you. He was in the first two, right? But he was always giving Axel work, right? They chewing my ass out because of you. I'm sick of this shit, Foley. I'm telling you, the next time you disobey an order, your ass is done. Right? That Inspector Todd was the man, but obviously, we're talking about 30 years since the last Beverly Hills Cop. If you were old as hell then, chances are you're not gonna be around. Um, that's why they had his ex-partner be the new inspector, essentially, the new chief of police in Detroit, but he was retiring too, right? So I thought they did a good job, like I said, and they did a good job of bringing back a lot of the people from um, the first show. You share an Earth Day with Ja Rastafari, him, Holly Selassie. Ah, yeah, I didn't know that actually. You just taught me something. I did not know that the 23rd was his day as well. Hmm. So maybe that's why I have found my way to the earth as a vegan, living off the land. My dad has a green thumb. and he's growing his own vegetables. He's like it's it has evolved past a garden. It's now turning into a mini farm in his backyard. And I'm like, yo, make sure you put a lot of that stuff aside for me. Cause, I eat a lot of vegetables and I eat a lot of greens, and he's growing all kinds of stuff back there. So anyway, I digress. A Key writes, you enjoyed the new Hard Knocks episode? I did. I talked for about a good 20-25 minutes about that episode 2. I definitely enjoyed that episode, and I can't wait to watch episode number 3. All right. So Mr. Debro said, "Don't do it, bro. Louie gonna have you sleeping on the couch. You can't be an asshole when you do it, right? It's got to be in a firm enough tone that she knows you're serious, but you got to know your wife too, right? Like you have to understand who your wife is, how she operates. Like, don't let me get you in trouble if you know that's not gonna work and it's only gonna get you in the doghouse. Don't do it. Like, again, got to know who you're dealing with." Okay. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the final segment of the show. Y'all know what it is. Normally it's garbage time, but we got a special close of the show today, and it's story time with me, your man Louie T. Or usually when it's story time with Uncle T. Yeah, all of y'all gather around and let Uncle T tell you a story. All right, you guys are ready for Uncle T's story? And this is with the part where you go, yay! All right, gather around, gang. Let's let's have story time. So last episode, I told you guys that I was gonna tell you a story about being high out of my mind. So, okay, let me give you a little bit of backstory here. I told you guys I'm a square. I've said this on previous episodes of the podcast, going back a ways. Um, I took this test, right? There was this little weird test that they had. I forgot where it was. It might have been on social media. And it asks, if you've done any of these things, and if you have, you give yourself a point or whatever. And then they had a grading scale at the end. And I had only did like 1 or 2 of the things. And so I'm a square, right? I don't smoke. I don't do any of that stuff. I do indulge in adult beverages, but smoke has never been my thing. For most of my life, I was an athlete, so I stayed away from smoking. It wasn't something that I desired to do. But as I've gotten older, edibles have become a real thing. And I was like, you know, first of all, let me say this: kids, don't do drugs. I am Louie T, and I approve of that message. So, edibles are more of my speed. I've always wanted to try, like, what's the deal? What's the deal with this weed thing, right? What's the deal? Who said that? Where did I get that from? What's the deal with this? Where did I get that from? I can't remember. What's the deal with this? Where did I get it from? I don't remember where I got it from, but it was funny wherever it came from. GT7 says, Louis, the best way to describe Supercell, top boy blended with heroes. Yep. I was laughing with my wife because I told her, he's the top boy now. He's the top shotter. And she said, shut up. Because, there's a show on Netflix called Top Boy. And it's based off of, it's like the drug game and vying for supremacy there. And it's like, I think it's England based too. I don't watch the show, but I know enough about it to know what you're talking about. Anyway, um, So I always wanted to know what it felt like to be high on weed. Like, what's the fuss about this? Why do people indulge in this? And people don't get violent. Weed is not a drug that normally, now they call it a gateway drug, right? But it's not something that you normally get addicted to or anything like that. You like to do it recreationally, but you can put weed down if you want. So anyway, edibles made it a lot more likely that I'd be able to experience what people who smoke experience because um it didn't involve me damaging my lungs, inhaling anything. I, I don't like the way that weed smells on people's breath. I've been around a lot of weed smokers in my life, and I was like, "Nah, I'm good on all of that. I don't need any of that." So edibles made it a lot more attainable for someone like myself, right? A lot more feasible is probably the better way to phrase that. So I told you guys about the first time I took an edible, and you know, the second time was the one that really was crazy. And I told you that story before. And so one of the things that I've slowly learned about edibles is that there are different varying strengths of edibles. And I'm foreign to all of this. I don't know the potency of 5 milligrams versus 10. I just know one has more, 10 and then 25 and 50 and 100. And I don't know what that means though. I just know, okay, this has more milligrams and this one has more and this one has a lot more and this one has a lot more. But I don't really know the effects, like how strong it's going to be for someone like myself who's a newbie, a novice. If you like my, if you get high, I'm not saying that you're going to be less high, but your body's already used to, being high. So it may not affect you as much. You're going to feel the high, but you might not be acting the way that I'm acting, you know. Case in point. We got some edibles here recently. And where we normally get our edibles from, we didn't get them this time. And I hadn't had edibles in a while. And it's not that I was looking to take them, but we had a long weekend. I was like, why not? So um, the bag said 55 milligrams, or excuse me, 500 milligrams. So I'm like, oh, you know, I'd I'd recently been on this site because one of the companies I was working with, they were trying to gauge how interested people might be in, doing some ad reads and things of that nature, and having a sponsor that did THC and all that stuff. So I went on the site to check it out, and I was looking around and I was looking at the different products they had and then the strength of these products. And I didn't really know what I was looking at. So the strongest milligram dosage was 100. And I'm thinking about the pack in the kitchen and I'm like, that one's 500 though. So I'm like, damn, the one in the kitchen must be crazy, right? So what I'm still learning is the entire pack collectively 100 milligrams, or is each individual edible 100 milligrams in terms of its strength? I don't know. These are the things that I'm trying to figure out, right? And I don't know, like, because what I don't want to do, and this is the thing that I did the first time, is you take an edible and because you don't know what it feels like to be high. This has only happened to me the first time because now I know what it feels like. When I'm high, I know what it feels like. But I didn't know. That was my first time taking it. I didn't know what it felt like to be high. So I'm like, man, this ain't doing shit. This ain't doing a damn thing. So now you want to take another one. Slow your monkey ass down. That's how you get in trouble. Now I know what I feel like when I'm high, but there's varying degrees, as I found out here the other day, of being high. So I told you the story one time when I was super high. I thought that was really high. Oh no. That was not that was not high at all. Right. That was child's play compared to how high I was the other day. So I take this edible, right? And I'm thinking in my mind it's 500 milligrams. So I'm like, yo, this shit's got to be crazy. What I came to find out, and you know what was crazy is and my wife is looking at me and I'm tripping, right? She could see I'm tripping. And every time I look at her, I'm like, yo, this 500 milligram ain't no joke. And she's looking at me like, okay, guy, shut up. Enjoy your high and shut up. So what it ultimately was is the bag itself contained 500 milligrams roughly. When you combine all of the individual edibles that were in the bag, each edible in the bag was 33 milligrams, which is more reasonable. From what I saw on the site that I was on, they had 50 and 100. Again, I'm not sure if that's the combined amount, like if there's 10 in the bag, each are 5, or if it's each individual edible has 50 milligrams of THC in it, whatever the case may be. I digress. So I eat the edible. I'm chilling. At first, I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool, right? And this is when I know I'm high. I get this sensation all the way down to my feet. And it's this tingly feeling. It starts at my knees, and it goes all the way to my feet. And it's like, it's hard for me to explain it, but it's like I get the tinglies all the way down my knee, down my shin, all the way down my ankle to the tips of my feet. And then there's like this pop. And it's like this release of, oh, you high, right? So once I get that, and then after it goes, it comes all the way back, all the way up to the top of my body. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm feeling this shit. And so I looked at my wife and I was like, yo, this 500 ain't no joke. She's like, you already said that 5 times, bro. Chill. So I'm sitting there, we're watching something on television, and all of a sudden, like, I'm not in and out of consciousness. I remember patches of everything that happened. I can tell you everything that happened, but there's like little gaps where I felt like I wasn't in my body, right? Like, bro, like I'm sitting on the couch, but I can't even formulate a rational thought. All I can do is laugh. Right? Like I'm blinking and I look up and like there's no ceiling on my roof of my house. Like I'm staring up to the sky, but it's no sky there. It's just like infinite darkness, right? And I'm just looking up like this is crazy, bro. When did we paint the roof black? So I'm looking at my wife and I'm laughing and she's looking at me like, yo, you're tripping, bro. And now I start doing weird shit. Like I'm next to my wife and I'm grabbing her and I'm like, hey, I just need you close to me right now. Right. And she's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, get off of me. And I'm like, I just need you near me. Right. She was laughing at me. We're watching television. I'm attempting to watch television. It's not happening right now, right? I try to get up. I can't even muster up enough strength to get out of the couch. I'm I'm pushing with every ounce of strength in my body. I got my fist balled up. I push it into the couch with as much force as one can, and I am not going anywhere. And I'm looking at my wife like, "Hey, a little help here, please. What's going on?" Right? And she's like, "Bro, get up." I'm like, "I'm trying to get up. I can't get up." So my wife has to help me to my feet. I stand up and my knees buckle. My knees buckle. I don't go down. All right. I ain't no punk about mine. I stay on my feet, but man, my shit's buckled. Right. But I keep my balance. I stand up. But I'm like kind of hunched over like the hunchback of Notre Dame. I can't like fully straighten up my body. Like I'm not picking up my feet when I'm walking. So they're hitting the ground. Right. As we as I walk, right? And they're making all kinds of noises. And I'm trying to go to the kitchen, but I am moving at a very slow rate of speed. Okay. And I crash a little bit into the bathroom door as I try to turn the corner to get to the kitchen. And at that point, I realize, man, I am effed up. Like, it was so bad. It felt like my ankles were the bottom of my feet. So like it felt like I was walking on my ankles, not my feet. So I go back to the living room to try and sit down to watch television. And at this point, like everything is like non-existent. Like I'm sitting in a room and the TV's on, but everything around the TV is like it doesn't exist. Like I'm just staring into the abyss. And I'm trying to focus on like certain items in the room, and I just like I'm seeing stars and rockets and all kinds of bullshit, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And my head's spinning, and I don't feel sick or anything like that. I don't feel like I'm like relaxed, but I'm just like, bro, what the f is going on right now? And so I look at my wife, and I'm like, yo, this 500 ain't no joke. Right? And so we sit there and I'm telling you, I'm in my mind, I'm saying, bro, this is crazy. Why do I feel this way? And I'm telling you, my body had to be like, bro, what the is this? Because my whole entire body was just like, bro, what is this foreign substance you put in us? You do all of this shit, this clean living, clean eating shit, and then you do this? Like, what do you think is gonna happen, bro? And the thing I like about edibles is they get to your bloodstream quick. So I was high within 10 minutes, and probably about 25 minutes in, I'm delusional at this point. So I'm having this out of body experience, and like I'm struggling to make it up the steps to get it to the bed. And now I'm starting to feel sick. And see, so this is the part I left out. And I don't know how much this had to do with any of this, but we spent the day, that night rather, so much of the evening and into the night at one of our friends' house, and I was drinking every type of liquor under the sun. I had tequila, I had whiskey, I had Cognac. I had vodka. Yeah. I was first of all, I broke the first rule, which is you don't mix light and dark. That's my rule. And you can do whatever you want. I tend to try not to. If I'm drinking dark, I try to stick with dark. If I'm drinking light, I try to stick to light, right? Try not to mix the two. I was drinking but I was fine. Hey, kids, don't drink and drive. But I was fine. Drove home, no issues. I didn't feel inebriated at all. But as you see on the commercials, buzzed driving is drunk driving. So don't drive after you've had drinks. Okay. I was fine. I know my limits. I know when I can't drive. I know when I can drive. I was fine. And plus, we live like 5 minutes up the road. But that's nor here nor there. So I get home. I'm feeling nice. I want to cap the night off. Oh, what the hell? Why not? So I take the damn edible. Biggest damn mistake I made that day. So now I feel sick. I get upstairs. I feel sick. I try to lay down because I'm thinking, all right, laying down is going to stop the room from spinning. It's going to stop me from feeling like I'm an astronaut floating out in space. It's going to calm everything down. Not exactly. I lay down and now my body's like, bro, you didn't answer me when I asked you when we were downstairs, what the hell is this shit you put in me? But when I don't know the answer, I just get rid of it. So now my body's like, bro, this shit's got to come up. And I'm like, nah, it's cool. Just chill, bro. Chill. It's gonna be all right. Let's just go to sleep and then we'll wake up and everything will be fine. And he's like, nah, that's not how this works. So I'm laying there trying to keep it together. And then finally I tell my wife, I gotta go get a drink of water. I stumble out of bed. I head to the hallway. Before I could make it to the steps, I make a sharp, turn and detour to the bathroom because I know I'm not going to make it downstairs. And I proceed to throw up. And I was fine after that. Fine, at least until I woke up the next morning. So I get up the next morning and I am still high as a kite. I get up the next morning, I'm thinking that vomit is gonna, get all of that out of my system. I'll be fine. It's been hours. I'm good. Not exactly. Not exactly. I get up and my head is spinning, bro. I go downstairs and my kids are excited. Hey, daddy, good morning, dad. And I'm like, oh, you're loud. Like I just had a hangover or something. And that could have been what it was, but it didn't feel like a hangover. I've had those before, right? So I'm sitting downstairs and I'm just not good. And I look at my wife and I'm like, yo, I got to go upstairs and lay down. So I go upstairs, I lay down, I get up, and I'm fine. After that nap, I'm good. Come downstairs, eat, playing with the kids. I'm good now. So I don't know if I convinced myself that it was just all of the drinks that I had. That's the reason why that shit had me tripping. So I went back for seconds. This time, though, I'd said, okay. And this was this weekend. That was last weekend. This was this weekend. So this weekend, I make drinks. I'm the bartender for the family. And I name all of my drinks after superheroes and villains. So two of my most popular drinks are Storm and Jubilee. Jubilee is the less effective of the two. As you would imagine, I would call her the least scary and the least potent of the entire X-Men group, right? So that's the drink. If you're socially drinking, you don't want to get too messed up, you drink Jubilee, right? You can have a bunch of those and you'll be fine. As long as you eat, you drink a little bit of water, you'll be fine. I call that a level 4. Jubilee is Storm. So There's Storm and then there's Gambit. Storm is a level 6.5. Gambit is an 8. Gambit is Storm without any juice cutting it. It's just straight liquor. So I call it Gambit because you're gambling, bro. A few cups of this, you're thinking you're straight. It sneaks up on you. It tastes really good. So you're thinking, oh, yeah, this is great. And next thing you know, you're vomiting or you feel like shit. So you just got to be careful, right? Storm, it's cut with juice. So you're able to, as long as you eat, you're responsible, you should be fine, right? So I created a new drink. This one is frozen. And I called it Mr. Sinister. And I created Mr. Sinister. And I said, this one is a son of a bitch. And so I just found my Ninja. My wife bought me a Ninja blender 2 years ago. I had a Ninja. And when she bought me my Ninja, my Ninja was on its last days. And she knew it. So for Father's Day 2 years ago, she bought me a Ninja. I was so happy, but I was like, I'm not going to crack this thing open until my Ninja officially dies. And it died like probably 6 months after she bought me that blender. I just couldn't find what I did with the Ninja she bought me. I finally found it like a month ago. So I'm like, yo, I'm about to fire this bitch up, start using it all the time. I love blended drinks. I love smoothies. I love them for breakfast. I love them for lunch. I love them for dinner. I love smoothies. So I was like, I'm going to make an adult beverage smoothie, and I'm going to name it Mr. Sinister. So this had fresh organic strawberries, fresh organic peaches, fresh organic blueberries, which the blueberries gave it its color, which is why I named it Mr. Sinister. That, and it was going to be diabolical. Threw some peach schnapps in there, threw some tequila in there, some organic tequila. And then I threw in a couple of edibles. And this is the deep water we're going into. So I blended it all up. And these edibles obviously aren't going to just blend into nothing. They're little chunks and pieces that ended up at the bottom of the blender. The rest of it did blend in with the drink, but most of it ended up at the bottom of the blender in little pieces. So you'd be drinking it through a straw, and then you'd get to your straw getting, pinched up because it couldn't, no air could get in, and you'd just squeeze it, and there'd be a piece of edible at the bottom, and you just eat it, right? So I make the first batch. I'm fine. I look at my wife. She's fine. She's like, is there any more? I'm like, yeah, there's a little bit more. So we split that. I'm still good. I don't feel anything. I'll make another batch. Yeah. So I make another batch of Mr. Sinister. And this time, Mr. Sinister did what Mr. Sinister is supposed to do. He got medieval on my ass. Pause. Yeah. I had that little thing happen that I told you about earlier where it starts at my knee and it trickles down to my feet and then it pops and then it unfurls all the way back up to my head. And I said, uh-oh. Here we go again. But this time I was determined, boy. I was determined. So I felt it coming, right? It took a little while this time. Not like the first time. It took a little while. But we're watching Supercell. We're on episode 6, the final episode. And I just get up and I start pacing because I'm like, I'm not going to succumb to this shit like I did the last time. So I'm like, if I stand up and I walk around, it's going to give me a fighting chance. This is the shit you tell yourself when you're high. So I'm walking, I'm pacing back and forth. My wife's like, "What are you doing? Sit down." I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm good." So I'm pacing back and forth. She's like, "Look, bro, you're making me nervous. Just sit down. What are you doing?" And I'm doing that whole I feel like I'm walking on my ankles thing, but I'm really walking on my feet. So I'm barely picking my feet up off the floor. So I'm making a bunch of noise. So it's really distracting. She's like, "Bro, just sit down." So I sit down. And this is when you know you high. You start doing stupid shit. So I look at my wife and I bust out laughing. So, she knows I'm high now. So she's like, she pauses the TV. What? So she gets a kick out of this shit. She enjoys seeing me high and acting a damn fool. So she wants to know what I'm laughing at. So I'm I'm like, nah, it's dumb. I don't want to tell you. She's like, bro, what are you laughing at? I said, I tried to move and I couldn't move. I got stuck. I couldn't move. Right. So I don't know. This is a different conversation for another day, but I sleep in REM. If you're a non-REM sleeper, then you've probably never experienced this. But if you sleep in REM, which is rapid eye movement, your body shuts down, right? Your brain shuts your body down as you sleep. So if you wake up and you're conscious, but your body is still in REM, you can't move. Your body is paralyzed. So there were times when I was young, especially, where I would wake up and I would be laying in the bed for 50 minutes and I want to get up, but I can't. My body won't physically move. In my mind, I'm telling myself, bro, you gotta get up. Get up. I can't get up. I don't know if that's ever happened to any of you out there. And what I would do when I would be in REM is I would count to 3. I would be there for like 30, 40 minutes. Then I'll say, all right, we got this. On the count of 3, we're just gonna get up. We're gonna just jump. Your whole body, you just gonna move, right? 1, 2, 3. And I would finally jump up and I would move and I would like, I would finally get up, right? So I was doing one of those type of situations, except the counting didn't work, right? So you know what snapped me out of it? I had to do a puzzle on the television screen. I know this shit sounds stupid. And this is that hot shit, right? I said, so I counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. And my body's like, nah, bro. Try something else. It's like you tried a incorrect code. Anyway, try again. So all of a sudden, these puzzle pieces appeared on the television. We're watching Supercell. I'm supposed to be watching episode 6 of Supercell. And the pieces of the puzzle are like, you fit these together and you'll be able to move. So now I'm sitting there and I'm like, and I'm sliding the pieces around and I get the last piece in place. And just like that, I'm able to move. So I started laughing like, yo, that was the craziest shit ever. And so I started laughing and she's like, what? And I told her the story and she was weak. She was weak. And I was like, yo, this shit is crazy. So this last time, it was more funny than the first time. The first time I was not in my body. Like it was an out of body experience the first time that I did this particular edible. But this second time, I remembered a lot more. I was more aware of what was going on around me. I just still I tried to get out of the couch again. I couldn't get up. She had to help me get up. I was moving in slow motion again. This time it was the first time it was a very rapid decline. Like, bro, I went from high to out of my mind. This one, it was like, okay, you're high, you're a little bit more high, you're a little bit more high. I got to the point where I was like, bae. So we were watching episode 6 of Supercell, and there was this one part of the episode where the guy is talking to his fiance, and he's finally explaining to her why he had been acting so strange recently and why he needed to do the things he was doing. And that was because if he didn't do these things, she was going to die on July the 9th. And so it was this long drawn out monologue. They were talking to each other, they were getting emotional, all that. It felt like 45 minutes long. I'm like, oh my God, how long have they been talking? So I get the remote and I hit the button to see how much longer this episode is going to be, because shit, they had to be talking for just 30 minutes just now by themselves. I hit the button and we're only at the 23-minute mark. And I had just hit the button like maybe 3 minutes earlier when it was at 20 minutes. So I'm thinking, yeah, we got to be at like the 50-something minute mark. Like that was a long ass, monologue and shit. They were just doing like, God, Lee. So I hit it. 3 minutes had gone by. That was it. 3 minutes. I was like, yo, I'm not going to make it. I'm just going to be honest with you. I am not going to make it through this episode. I'm not going to know what the hell happened. This is the final episode. We need to stop this. And, the best shows to put on when you're high are funny shows because you just want to laugh. So, yeah, in the show, it's crazy. It was July 9th, 2024 that she was supposed to perish. So, it was just hilarious. And then as we turned it off, I got higher and higher and higher. And I was like, bro, this shit is happening again. This time, though, I felt more in control. Still a pseudo out-of-body experience, but I was more prepared for it this time. I was more aware of things that were going on, funny things that that were happening or I was saying. I was aware of it. I wasn't looking to be funny. Like literally, I put a puzzle together, an imaginary puzzle together to get up, to move on the couch. Like that happened. That really happened. It really happened. So I was aware of all of these things and I was able to go to sleep. Now, when I hit the pillow that night, like I told my wife, I'm tired. Let's go to bed. And I got upstairs and I laid down on that pillow and I didn't move the rest of the night from that position. It was some of the best sleep I have had in a very, very long time. So, in closing, be careful. The milligrams, they mean something, okay? Don't for 1 second think that, especially if you're a novice like myself, don't think for 1 second, oh, that little, 10 or 25 milligram ain't gonna do nothing for me. I need something stronger. Know your role. As a wise man once said, know your role and shut your mouth. Understand who you are, how you operate, and how you move. And if you don't know, no, not you don't know, right? If you don't know, now you know. No, you don't know. Start slow if you're gonna start. Again, kids, don't do drugs. Excuse me. Don't do drugs. But if you're not gonna listen to me, your man Louie T, and you're gonna do them anyway, do them responsibly, please. I don't advocate for you to do any drugs of any kind. But if you're gonna take an edible, start slow. Work your way up. Figure out what is your limit. Don't try to be, you know, King Kong, and you would go for the strongest stuff, because I'm telling you, shit is no joke. You know what I was thinking about when I was taking the edible? I thought about how dudes be smoking that synthetic weed and then tripping. Remember Zay Jones was jumping out the window for Jesus, you know, about to kill himself, butt ball naked. Remember that? Remember Chandler Jones walked all the way to the police station in his drawers and then got down on his knees with his hands behind his back and said, "Help me," at the police station? Remember Robert Kimdiche jumped out of a second-story window? That synthetic weed ain't no mother effing joke. Do not smoke that shit, right? And all I could think of was, I could see how that shit happens. You take some shit and it'll have your mind tripping. I was putting together a puzzle, sliding pieces, a virtual puzzle on the television so that I could move. How does that work? Hey. As a wise man once said, cocaine's a hell of a drug. I'm gonna extend that quote to encompass edibles. Edibles are a hell of a drug. If you're gonna take them, as a wise man used to say to me, son, be ready. That's gonna do it for me, your man Louie T, and story time. I thank you guys for joining me on this installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. We should be back again this week on the pod. Can't make any promises though. I got a lot of stuff coming up, so I'll be all over the place. But the goal is to come back at some point, whether it's during the day on Thursday, during the day on Friday, maybe Friday night, depending on how the weekend goes. You probably will see me again on the podcast. I think you're going to get one more pod out of me sometime this week. We'll start to tighten up. We'll start to have a real, actual schedule. You know, once we get into the swing of things, that's on the horizon. Also, be on the lookout for the LTN exclusives. I'm starting to put that together, and I should be ready to promote that here shortly. We had a blast last year, and it was the best year for the LTN exclusives. I'm hoping that we can top what we did last year. It was a lot of fun. So anyway, I digress. You guys have a good one. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time. God bless. Good night.